continues to have a significant impact, and diverse groups such as women and newcomers to Canada are underrepresented in the mining labor force. Our research indicates that women comprise half of Canada's population and about 48% of its labor force, yet in the mining labor force, women represent only 17%. Improving this statistic involves a combination of collaborative solutions, from encouraging young girls to pursue math and science studies, to building a gender-inclusive awareness of the industry, to appointing more women to senior leadership and board positions. I'm going to hand it over to Kristen now, who is going to take us through our conversation today about trailblazers and mentorship in the industry.
Great, thanks, Jen. Hi, and thank you to everyone for participating in the webcast. My name is Kristen Cuddington. I'm a member of the board of Women in Mining Canada, and I will be hosting this webcast on behalf of WIM Canada. Please note that this webcast will be recorded and made available online. Link will be posted through the ENSEMBLE network and on the WIM Canada website. There will be time at the end for questions. Please write questions you would like addressed by our speakers into the right navigation bar under questions. It's our pleasure to be able to provide this opportunity to Christine Petch, WIM Canada Rick Hutson Memorial Award winner, and Aimee Harper, WIM Canada Student Trailblazer Award winner. These are two truly remarkable women who will be highlighting their own personal experiences and personal thoughts on mentorship.
Please remain on the line.
Jen, sorry, before we start here, was I on hold, or was what I said people able to hear that?
I can hear you, Kristen. It's Angie here.
Great. So just moving on. There are many different ways to mentor, and today we're going to talk about formal and structured programs and relationships developed over time, either in our personal lives or careers. Today, we are privileged to welcome Gent to provide us with an understanding of formal mentorship relationships. Anne holds a degree in land use and environmental studies and has over 18 years of experience in environmental research, consulting, and regulatory compliance. She is currently a senior environmental scientist with Cameco Corporation and is actively involved in a variety of organizations and currently serves on the board of Women in Nuclear Canada and the Saskatchewan Women's Network, and is also chair of the board of Women in Mining and Women in Nuclear Saskatchewan, Inc., and was instrumental in the development of the Mine Your Potential Mentorship Program, which was launched in January. Thank you to Anne for being here. Now over to you.
Thank you, Kristen. Hi, everyone. As she said, my name is Gent, and I work as a senior environmental scientist with Cameco Corporation in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan. I do sit on the board of Women in Nuclear Canada, as well as chair of the board of Women in Mining and Women in Nuclear Saskatchewan, also known as WIM-WIN Sask. First off, I would like to take a moment to congratulate the Women in Mining Canada Rick Hutson Memorial Award winner and the Student Trailblazer Award winner. I look forward to hearing your thoughts on mentorship a bit later in the call. As Kristen mentioned, I will be speaking on formal mentoring relationships today. To better understand what formal means, let me provide you with a brief description of what formal mentorships typically involve. This is not an inclusive list, and basically these programs can be almost anything. But formal mentorship programs commonly require an application process. While not all programs require payment, most formal mentorship programs require that mentees pay to participate and undergo a formal application process. These programs can use a formal set of questions to help match mentors with their mentees. The questions can revolve around a variety of topics, including career goals, challenges, successes, personal and professional motivations, as well as personality questions to help ensure a good match. It is essential that these questions are always answered honestly and completely. Many formal mentorship programs have a set term. For example, the mentoring relationship may run for 6 months or perhaps even a year. There is a time frame set out, and it is known to everyone who applies right from the start. This program will end on this date. Most formal mentorship programs also require that both the mentor and the mentee commit to a minimum time. Many programs recommend a minimum number of one-on-one coaching sessions. Most of these one-on-one meetings last approximately an hour and are recommended to take place monthly or quarterly, really depending on the length of your program. Also, these programs can have formal events associated with them. While not all formal mentorship programs do this, many have a formal opening, developmental seminars, workshops, and/or some networking activities that take place throughout the program, and a final meeting or celebration at the end of the program to kind of cap off all of the relationships that have grown. Research has shown that effective mentorship programs that are tailored to individuals can significantly increase employee engagement, retention, and productivity, ultimately helping us to achieve our goals. A more diverse and gender-balanced team can result in improved innovations, profits, and company culture, and of course, keep all the employees happy. Many companies have developed internal mentorship programs to support women and help them advance in their careers, but there is always room for improvement. Discussion with our WIM Sask members showed that some women lack strong support systems and resources, especially at remote mining operations, and as a result, they can leave the industry. This is the reason many companies and individuals choose to create or participate in formal mentorship programs. Formal mentorship programs have experts. That is their job to take vague, loosely worded desired outcomes that a mentee might have and convert them into well-written, attainable goals. They can also help to break down what seems like an impossibly large goal into smaller steps to make the task less overwhelming. It's their job to work with mentors and mentees to find common threads that connect them and use those strands to help build a close-knit relationship. These experts are also someone you can go to if you have any concerns with your match or just need additional support during the process. With a formal mentorship program, you are never on your own. One of the largest benefits of formal mentorships may be the ability to be matched with someone outside your company, business sector, or personal circle. This may help mentees feel a bit more open to discuss some of the personal and professional challenges and/or successes that they are experiencing in their workplace or personal life. An outside view can not only be refreshing, it can help to keep things in perspective. Scheduled meetings as part of a formal mentorship relationship are a time to share best practices and really also challenge each other to get outside of your comfort zones. While these meetings may be very casual, some formal programs prepare discussion topics and themes for these meetings to add more structure. Many formal programs provide participants with research and discussion papers to facilitate learning and really enhance the mentorship experience. Some have online discussion forums for participants to post as themselves or anonymously and gain even more valuable perspectives throughout their mentorship journey. While meeting a mentor that has been assigned to you as a formal mentorship relationship can be awkward at first, as like any relationship, it's important to give it time. Keep an open mind about your allocated mentor. Having someone that may think differently from you can seem very difficult at first, but really can result in enhanced learning experience. One of the added benefits for a formal mentorship program benefits not only the mentees and the mentors, but also possibly the companies and/or organizations running the programs. And that's the information collected in the background. The program managers will have access to a variety of information, such as how many participants are in the program, how many mentors applied, how many mentees applied, and how many were matched. Information on the sectors or companies that participants come from, and what their job titles or backgrounds are. Matching success rates. How successful were the mentor and mentee matches, and how can you improve them? And also the level of engagement of participants can be tracked throughout the formal mentorship relationship. If someone is not engaged or has withdrawn, the experts that run the program can help to find out why and bring them back into the program and keep them in line and working towards their goals. This information is very important to modify and adapt formal programs to best suit the needs of the participants over time. Feedback like this was a key factor in the decision for WIM Saskatchewan to partner with the IMII and Everwise to launch the formal Mind Your Potential mentorship program. This program has received funding for 140 formal mentoring relationships for women in the mining industry in Saskatchewan over the next 2 years. We used feedback from our members and their companies to create a formal program designed to address the challenges women face in the mining industry and help mentees achieve their goals, and we will continue to modify the programs as participants provide comments. Our male and female mentors play a key role in the success of the program and create champions within the industry. For more information, please visit our website at wimwinsask.com. Look for more information on the next cohort scheduled to start recruiting in August of 2018. With that, I would like to thank Women in Mining Canada and MIR for hosting this discussion today, and we'll turn it back over to Kristen.
Great, thanks, Anne. It's helpful to have a frame of reference for this discussion. Mentorship is top of mind for a lot of our listeners and the mining industry generally. So now that we've heard about formal mentorship, we're fortunate to have Angelina Mehta with us today to discuss informal mentorship relationships. Angelina holds a degree in mining engineering and an MBA from McGill University in Montreal. She is pursuing a Master's of Law degree at York University part-time. Angelina was an investment manager for the last 5 years with the Genik Group, a private equity fund focused on natural resources. She is currently a senior mining advisor with Paradigm Capital in investment banking and also works with the North American Nickel, a junior nickel sulfide exploration company with a project in Greenland. Angelina is a member of the board of directors for Asvet Exploration in Quebec and director with WIM Canada. Thank you, Angelina, for being here. Now over to you.
Thank you. Can everybody hear me?
You bet.
Okay, excellent. So before I begin, I want to also congratulate our winners for the Rick Hutson Memorial Award for Mentorship and our student Trailblazer. Many congratulations. Now, before I start, I want to also say that I am by no means an expert on mentoring of any kind. I just happen to have been lucky enough to have some really rich experiences with informal mentoring over the last 10 or 15 years. So I wanted to talk about a little personal side of those experiences, but also what I'll do is I'll run through this slide here on some of the pros and cons. We heard a fantastic structured program described by Anne earlier, and some of the pros for informal mentoring are really that there's chemistry between a few people, and the relationships are really based on chance meetings sometimes and emotional connections. And in some of the examples I'll give, we'll be able to see that some of these relationships are very long-term and don't actually have to fit into the constraints of a specific program. Also, from my experience and from the point on the slide, these meetings and relationships are self-driven. They move forward when somebody needs something or needs to bounce ideas off of someone, and they're basically completely self-motivated. And they also have very quick responses if there's a strong relationship there. And finally, there usually are no costs aside for perhaps copious amounts of wine and coffee that are purchased during the mentoring sessions. I do have to say on the negative side, with the mentees that I've had over the years, there really isn't a defined relationship, and that there's no measurement to how our discussions go. There's no formal reading or resources that we can lean on in order to move forward with our conversations. At the same time, at least I draw on my own experiences and my own network to answer the questions or to support the mentee. What I wanted to do is just go through a couple of examples that I've had in the last 10 or 15 years, as I mentioned, of really great relationships. So as Kristen mentioned, I graduated from McGill Mining Engineering and have always felt a very strong attachment to the university, particularly the mining engineering group, and have often gone back to either teach courses or help with seminars or participate in student life in some way. And for me, that has been an enormous resource for meeting young, keen people that are just coming into the mining and engineering industry. One in particular I wanted to mention that I met, a young man, and I have had male and female mentees over the years, graduated from mining engineering maybe 4 or 5 years ago. I had met him maybe 7 or 8 years ago, and just recently called me up to say, here's where I am in my career. You've done an MBA. What do you think? Should I do that? And how do I just take the next step in my career? And what I love about a phone call like that is, number one, we were really close during the program or during when he was doing the program, and I was helping out as a lecturer, lost touch for a few years, then got reconnected on LinkedIn. And it was just a fantastic reminder of this relationship that we had. Basically my response to these things is, as long as you do well, you're going to make me look good. So I take a lot of advantage from the success of mining engineering alumni that came from McGill, because I feel like it reflects positively in all of its grads. So great to hear from students as they progress in their careers. Another way that I connected with students often is through my career, both when I was working at mines up in the north of Canada, as well as when I was working with a private equity fund. I consistently hired students for work terms. And for me, that is an amazing source of cheap labor, high energy, and new skills. And particularly when I was with Sentient, I would take the students with me when I went on site visits, whether it was all over the U.S., I brought one with me to Brazil. And, what I do is I learn what's coming out of the school system in terms of new curriculum. These kids are amazingly savvy and excel. And so not only am I guiding how they think, but I'm also learning what's new and keen coming out of school. So it's been win-win for me. I also have had the opportunity through WIM Canada and WIM Montreal to engage with a number of amazing students. In fact, something that I really wanted to highlight today was the actual genesis of the Rick Hutson Memorial Award and the Student Trailblazer Award came out of a relationship that I had with a McGill mining engineering student a number of years ago. So that actually was the start of what has ultimately turned into a fantastic awards program, and it was from students. So not only did I help the student get where she wanted to go in terms of volunteer work and new ideas, but we have actually managed to strengthen Women in Mining Canada's Trailblazer platform through that relationship. So I guess the last thing I want to say on informal mentoring is conferences, fantastic way to connect with young, new people coming into the industry. For me, the benefit is also to make sure that I have my eye on people that I want to hire to work with in the future, and also to refer to others, because I really think that mentoring is, for me, an offshoot of networking. And I feel like I do as much work on the mentoring side as I do in my own network, and it's just a continuation of the other. So with that, we'll flip to the next slide, because I wanted to mention the IWRMP, which is the International Women in Resource Mentorship Program. Now, this is kind of back to what Anne was talking about with respect to a structured program. I don't want to spend too much time on the slide, but I did want to say that Women in Mining Canada, in partnership with Ali Burston and Barbara Dissinger from International WIM, pulled this program together. It was launched at PDAC this year in March. I believe there were over 30 matched mentors and mentees, and really the intention was a global initiative to help retain and support women globally. I think that this is very structured. It's going to be 6 months, as I said, kicked off in March, so culminating 6 months after that. But this initiative is really the first of its kind with such an international scope, and it is proceeding with tons of feedback both from the mentors and mentees. So hopefully we'll have another season after this one, it was one that was also that required fees. So it wasn't free. At the same time, I think there's place in our industry for both formal and informal programs. And I look forward to answering any questions at the end of the session if there are any. That's all from me, Krista.
Great, thanks, Angie. It's good to get some understanding, even though you're not by any means an expert. You do have a lot of experience, and I think you've given us a good flavor, both you and Anne, a good flavor of what these two forms of mentorship are. And again, there are many different kinds of mentorship. Just today, we've looked to focus on really just the formal and informal relationship. So at this point, we thought it would be a good opportunity to hear from our award winner, Christine Petch. So Women in Mining Canada is excited to congratulate Christine Petch, the recipient of the 2008 Rick Hutson Mentor Award. Christine is the founder of C. Petch Consulting, which provides fit-for-purpose risk management and project management solutions for the resource sector. Prior to consulting, Christine spent 20 years with Falconbridge, Xstrata, Glencore, where she worked on many exploration projects, including the discovery of the Qiqalik nickel deposit, and held a variety of corporate roles within the business development, sustainability, and strategic leadership teams. She's a volunteer mentor with APGO, a member of PDAC's Human Resources Development Committee, and is also the chair for Women in Mining Toronto. Christine is going to share with us her own personal thoughts on mentorship, what makes a difference for her, what works, and of course, what areas we can all learn from, improve, and make a difference in terms of mentorship as we move forward. Thank you, Christine, for being here. Now over to you. Christine, I'm not sure if your phone's on mute. Might have some technical difficulties here with Christine. I'm just going to move on to our student Trailblazer, and then we'll circle back to
Hi, Kristen.
Oh, perfect. Great.
Very, very sorry about that.
No worries. Whenever you're ready.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to say thank you so much for having me as part of this discussion. It's one that's definitely near and dear to my heart. And also to Anne and Angelina for your comments on the informal and formal mentorships. I think it's absolutely key to have both in your life. So my comments, I'm going to be breaking down into three components. I'd just like to talk a little bit about my own experiences being mentored, my experiences doing the mentoring, and then also just to finish with a few key concepts from what I feel makes for successful mentoring. So I'll start, well, for those of you who don't know me, I've been out of school for just over 20 years now, and I have to say that I felt that formal mentorship was definitely late for me. Certainly wasn't very exposed to it in early parts of my career, and I wouldn't be surprised if some of that has to do with the fact that I also grew up in the pre-internet age at that point, so I see a lot more exposure available these days. Having said that, I'd say the most sort of poignant sources of mentorship for me were my early bosses, which over 95% of them were men in my early part of career, and so grateful for the time that they took to train and impart their wisdom on me. This was a huge part of the learning, even though it wasn't necessarily always called mentorship. I think, especially the organization with which I was with, there was an expectation that if you had people reporting to you, that you were responsible for their learning and their improvement. I also did struggle to find role models, especially women role models, as I had a career that took me to very remote sites, and I also moved very frequently. Almost every 3 years I was moving cities, so it's difficult to sometimes connect and make relationships that can blossom into more of a mentorship. Having said that, though, I did get a lot of sort of mentoring support from my peers. You could say that I collected some great friends with a huge variety of backgrounds that supported me and acted as mentors, and sometimes as mentees as well. It was a great source of inspiration and an ability to bounce ideas and themes off of. About 10 years ago, I enrolled in my first formal mentoring program. I had a fantastic match, as in the sense a great woman, very accomplished, but we did struggle a little bit with connections. This was a program that included both people in the mining industry and outside of the mining industry, and my connection with someone who was outside of the mining industry. And it's sometimes you realize how a unique industry this can be on many fronts, and I found it sometimes a bit difficult to connect, but generally on sort of questions more about life, it was an excellent match, and I was very fortunate to have made that connection. The other thing that I really enjoyed about that formal mentoring program is the sort of courses and events that they organized that we were able to attend and meet other mentors and mentees, as well as just listen to some really inspirational speakers, which is I found a great source of information for myself. I think the other thing that I found when I was being mentored in the early days, that I had an expectation that I had to figure it all out myself, the career, what I was supposed to do. And really, it wasn't until my personal circumstances changed for me about 10, 12 years ago, where I actually started to learn how to reach out and ask for help a little bit more, did I realize that, mentoring is something that you can ask for as well. It doesn't need to be something that that's a bad thing or that's a problem to actually ask people for help. I'm thrilled to see how much is available now on the internet, and also just the concept of coaching that's available both formally and informally. In the past, that used to be something that was primarily reserved for executives, this sort of career coaching, but I have to say I've had some coaching that was paid for either by a human resources department for when I worked in a larger company, but now I'll actually quite comfortably pay that out myself as an investment in myself if that's required. And then as I expanded in my career or went on in my career, I started myself to do some mentoring. So I think the earliest part of me mentoring is actually when I started in more senior roles as a boss, so to speak. At the time, I was very busy just trying to figure out my job and my role, but I definitely noticed, especially on reflection, that there's always people that you are inadvertently mentoring when you are in those roles. So it's a great opportunity to do some mentoring. I'm currently volunteering for quite a few different causes, both inside and outside of the mining space, that I'm passionate about. I love doing this because I find that not only are you helping, but you're actually and absolutely learning about yourself while you do this work. So it's kind of a reverse mentoring almost. And I've also noticed that the larger age or experience gap that I have, the more impact that it seems to have, which is interesting for me. It's definitely, you always want to be able to make an impact. Formally, I'm mentoring through my professional association, which is the Association of Professional Geoscientists of Ontario. That point, I think I'm on my fourth mentee now, and I do find, I know Anne mentioned this about the time frames, but I do feel a time frame is important, that we understand where you start, where you stop. And then actually for all the mentees at the end of that 1 year, we've all agreed to sort of stay in touch on an as-needed basis, which has worked out quite well. Sometimes 8 months will go by before someone reaches out, but usually someone does reach out, which is very gratifying. I also do some volunteering through teaching opportunities. For example, there's an organization by the name of Next Gen Geo that runs here in Toronto, where I provide instruction on various geological or technical themes, as well as I also do some mentoring through an adult literacy group that's based here in Toronto. So that is a nice thing about being in a larger city, is you do have access to be able to participate with these sorts of groups. So just to wrap that up, the concepts that I find are key to me for a successful mentoring program, first of all, it does take time, is make sure that you do have the time available, both to take advantage of it and also to commit to it. I do believe in setting some objectives for mentoring, whether it be formal or informal. Understand what the mentee wants to get out of the experience and make sure you're working towards that it's, it's great to have someone to bounce ideas off, but it's even more powerful when you can set some goals. I did mention before, as Anne did, the time frame I think is important to sort of set a start and a stop. And even for the informal ones, that we set boundaries for the mentoring that indicate what you're available for, and be honest with time availabilities up front. I have come across an incident where there was, an individual was coming back again more and more and more, and at some point I just sort of had to say, look, let's sit down. What do you really want to get up? This is the time I have available. And we sort of picked the highest priority items and we focused purely on that. And I think that was what made both of us happy. The other thing I want to mention is that I would certainly encourage mentees to look for champions within their workplace, because I do see a difference between a champion within an organization and a mentor. And just to clarify that, a champion would sort of be that sort of higher ranked person within an organization that will help fulfill career goals, maybe not so much on a day-to-day basis, but perhaps on a more tactical basis. I also encourage people to realize that mentoring, or lack thereof, is not an excuse for taking responsibility for your own career. And to some extent, this may be a Gen X thing, and the reason I say that is the generation ahead of me were basically typically expecting the HR departments and the companies to organize their careers for them. And things are so rapidly changing nowadays that perhaps the younger generation don't even think of this. But I know certainly for my generation, that was definitely a transition where you were looking to human resources to provide a lot of these answers, whereas now you're looking more externally or to a much broader, more richer, diverse group of people. The other thing, or the last thing actually, is a lot of this is really about people management. And one of the things I love to do with my mentees is to actually work on personality tools that are freely available online to really support that know thyself concept. I find that often brings a lot of value to the individual. We always want to work on making sure that they are happy and moving toward in a direction that they want to move to, rather than perhaps the first thing that pops into people's head or what they think they should be doing. So that's certainly an area of focus. So that's it for me, Kristen. I'll look forward to questions at the end of the session if there are any.
Great. Thanks, Christine. I think it's good to hear some real examples of how mentorship really works in practice and what are the lessons learned. I know you said there's a lot online, but some of those lessons learned are something that we kind of accumulate through our own personal experience. So it's good to kind of hear, where the pitfalls could potentially be and, what things to keep mindful of. Just before we move on to Aimee, I just want to circle back to kind of that front-end introduction. I know we had a little bit of a technical glitch there. I noticed a few Cameco folks signed into this one and just heard that front-end piece, no one was able to hear that, or they couldn't hear it. So just so everyone knows, my name is Kristen Cuddington, and I'm a member of the board for Women in Mining Canada. And just to note that this webcast is recorded, so it will be available online. So if you were joining in late or someone was unable to listen in, it will be available through the ENSEMBLE network and on the WIM Canada website. One of the most important pieces here, and we wanted this to be more of a dialogue, and what Christine and we're all kind of alluding to towards the end, is there'll be an opportunity for questions. So if you do have a question that you want to raise to any of the panelists, just write them in the question portion of the navigation bar, and then we'll just read them out. If they are directed to someone specifically, just make sure you indicate that within the question box. So, and again, we really wanted to highlight our award recipients, Christine Petch and Aimee Harper, and they're these very truly remarkable women, and just highlight their experience and their thoughts on mentorship. So that was really the focus of today's webcast. So now, in saying all that, we'll hear from our last panelist, our student trailblazer, Aimee Harper. Women in Mining Canada is excited. Sorry, let's change the slide here. Is excited to congratulate Aimee Harper, the recipient of the 2018 Student Trailblazer Award. Aimee is the fourth year mining engineering student at Queen's. Aimee is going to speak about her experience with a focus on mentorship and the role it has played in her career. She'll speak to her experiences so far, whether she was formally mentored or were there people in her life who mentored her by simply being there, encouraging and supporting her. Also, speaking to her experience as a mentor for other young women. Thank you, Aimee, for being here. Over to you.
Thank you, Kristen. I am very happy to be here. Just wanted to double check with everyone that they can hear me.
You bet.
Okay, perfect. And I apologize, I am getting over a cold as well. I wanted to briefly touch about my mining career. It started 3 years ago when I decided to pursue the mining engineering discipline at Queen's.
And my mining career has consisted of my participation within the Mining Engineering Society at Queen's, as well as my 2 work placements over the past 3 years. I have completed a 4-month work term at Detour Gold, working with the survey team at their Detour Lake mine in Northern Ontario. And currently I am working through a 16-month co-op at CNRL's Horizon Oil Sands, working with short-range planning and mid-range planning as well. To connect with Angelina as well, she had mentioned that she had a good experience with mentorship at McGill. And one of the biggest things for me is at school, I am fortunate enough to have a strong support system of female mining students at various ages and industry and life experiences, as well as the mining department and engineering department is very supportive, who have encouraged me to participate within the engineering society, as well as pursue a 16-month internship placement. At CNRL, I just wanted to shed some light on my experiences for everyone to understand where I'm coming from. I started off as a mid-range planning student based at site, and my boss is based in Calgary, so we only touched bases a few times per month. I started in mid-range planning and was brought down to short-range planning to backfill the role of the weekly dump and dike planner for approximately 7 months, and then was switched back to mid-range planning after training my replacement, where I am now backfilling the role of the 3-month dump and dike planner as well. So my co-op experience has been unconventional in the sense that the roles that I have completed came with a large amount of responsibility for students, I would say, but I'm very fortunate to have been given these opportunities. And in switching from role to role, I have been able to build many relationships with people from various departments, such as operations and engineering and geotechnical. And these people have either been bosses, interim bosses, or just simply my peers. And I would say that my experience with mentorship has been informal as opposed to formal. And these are mostly relationships that I've built with people who I've met along the way at each job. So for me, my informal mentorship that I have experienced has allowed me to gain insight into a wide range of others' personal experiences and techniques at pursuing a job that I have adapted to the ones that I resonate most with. It has almost forced me to become independent and self-sufficient at my job. And as well as what was touched on earlier, I have to be self-driven. If I have an issue or a question, I have to be the one to go and figure out who is the most appropriate to answer that question. At work here, I have a large network of people, peers, colleagues, bosses who will stop what they're doing in order to help me if I need it. And I do have the support of my bosses and colleagues with regards to my planning. So right now, about twice a month, I make a presentation for the monthly plan. And I do have the support of my bosses, which has helped increase my self-confidence as a student and as a future mining engineer. And these people, informally, both from school and from previous workplaces, they continuously check up on me. We are in a constant back and forth with everybody. And another thing with informal, with all these relationships that I have been building, I have become extremely comfortable with approaching others with questions. I'm not just restrained to a single mentor as well. So overall, the role that my experience with informal mentorship has gained me is I've noticed I've become more self-driven and self-sufficient. And although I'm actively working on it, my self-confidence as an engineering student and in the future as a mining engineer has improved. With regards to mentoring others, the biggest thing for me right now, as I'm still a student, is to reflect on the experiences that I'm having and wanting to provide experiences of the same level or better if there is room for improvement for other young women starting their mining career. For example, when I came to CNRL, I didn't know anybody, so I had to figure a lot of things out on my own. Another area which I've reflected on is deciding to go on internship, which I have reflected that upon younger students within the mining department at Queen's as well. And I am still starting out at the very beginning stage of becoming a mentor, but I believe the instinct for me to become a mentor has become from being an older sister and wanting my younger sibling and therefore other young women to succeed in their endeavors. A big thing for me is building relationships with others, especially young women. I believe I'm an approachable person, and I find it easy to find common ground amongst other people, especially young women within the mining industry. That allows me to establish a relationship with them in hopes that they would have the confidence to come with me for any advice or questions that they do have. I am still a student, so I am still gaining these experiences. And as my career in mining starts to take off, I hope to become a larger role model and mentor to many young women within the industry. That is all that I have to say. Thank you, and now back to you, Kristen.
Great, thanks, Aimee. It's helpful to hear how mentorship has impacted you in your career, so thank you for taking some time. I know it's difficult with your schedule with work, but we appreciate you and your time today. So I'd also like to thank Anne, Angelina, Christine, and Aimee for the discussion today around mentorship. At this point, we'd like to open it up for questions. So again, if you'd like to ask any of our panelists a question, just indicate so on the navigation under questions, and I'll read that out for you. I have actually a question I'd like to start things off with, and this is for you, Anne. Why should people pursue a mentorship relationship?
I think a lot of... Sorry, did you say Anne or?
Yep, I said Anne.
Okay. I think a lot of people should pursue a mentorship relationship, not only to expand their networking circles, but also to learn from people who have, so to speak, been there. We all face very similar challenges throughout our career, even though our career paths may be very different. And mentorship relationships can help talk through some of those challenges, talk through some of those successes, and really help you understand that you're not alone in what you may be going through, and to help you focus your strengths, your goals in a direction to get you where you want to be in your career.
Well, I think that's very well said. Aimee, this one's for you. How do I ask someone to be my mentor?
Okay. Be a mentor. For me, I think just approaching somebody, whether it be a boss or a colleague. I know that here at my workplace, I do have a female engineering colleague who I look up to as a role model. And just sitting down and having the conversation, I think, is probably the way to do it. Explaining a situation for me, with my roles, I get very overwhelmed and very stressed. It's a very independent role, so I have reached out and sat down and kind of explained my situation, and that's kind of how I've connected with people to become a mentoree.
Great. No, it sounds like it's been fairly informal, which is nice because you're able to kind of find people that you can talk to and that can help you move forward in your career. Christine, this one's for you. How much time should I spend each month with my mentor or mentee? Sorry.
From the mentor's perspective?
Yeah, from the mentor perspective.
I would say it really depends on the objective. So I've had one student where we had a very time-sensitive goal that we were working towards, and one of the activities I actually had her do was just do a really short and simple schedule. that included the times that we were going to meet, and we were meeting as frequently as once every, we had a call every second week for updates. So the update calls are about half an hour. I've had other mentees that we typically do an hour a month. Excuse me. And again, at the beginning, and very much depending on what they want to do. And then the informal ones, I typically anywhere from usually I find half an hour to an hour is the time that I've found works well. If I could also just add on to the question that was given to Aimee was, I find it's really important as a mentor, if somebody's approaching me to be mentored, that they come to me with a particular question or problem or something that they'd like to work on, rather than perhaps, and almost exactly as she indicated, rather than have, just want to set up a mentoring relationship to have a mentor, so to speak, because that makes it a lot easier for the mentor to look at their schedule, book the times off, and I think it's a lot more satisfying to both parties as well, because you've got something that's very clear that you're working on.
Right. No, I think that is helpful to keep in mind, because you're looking for someone that's coming to you and has something that they're looking for some guidance on or some perspective. Angie, this question's for you. What should I do if we just don't click?
Well, that's pretty easy. In an informal mentoring situation, you just stop calling. Not to be facetious, I think that there's so many people out there that have different personalities and have value to bring. If I'm not connecting with someone, I would absolutely refer them to somebody else. I think there's enough of us out there that are at stages in our career that want to give back. And, I guess we can pick and choose really the relationships we want to foster in our internal networks, but certainly we can refer people on. But I do want to caution that when you make a reference, it's a reflection on yourself as well, right? So, if I'm not connecting with someone because I think there's either a lack of maybe not necessarily skill set, but genuineness, if that's the word, then I probably wouldn't recommend them either. But I do think that there's enough people out there that there can be matches made.
That's a good perspective too. Like, it is a reflection of yourself. So you're right. That's something that to keep in mind, because something that we see a lot of is informal mentorship or informal relationships, and that ease of kind of going in and out of them, and kind of what people are looking to get out of them is to keep that in mind. The length of time of a relationship. Christine, do you have any thoughts on how long a mentorship relationship would, based on maybe your experience?
I quite like 1 year, with the flexibility of adjusting as needed and as mutually agreed upon. I certainly wouldn't go shorter than 6 months, because I think it does take a little bit of time to move forward on things. But I have definitely had mentees that had, again, a shorter time frame, very specific goals, and then at the end of that goal, she's like, what, I'm good for now, and I don't really feel like I need anything at this point in time, but I really want to keep in touch and just reach out as I need to. So I think 1 year is a great starting point, and then after that to adjust. And that's the nice thing with informally, you're completely flexible to do that. And typically I don't know if I've got timelines on any of the informal people that I mentor with, because we do it on a more as needed basis. In the more formal ones, we look to the program to provide that guidance, or I've actually gone back to the organizer of a more formal program as well, and just had that discussion about what's appropriate, and in order for the three of us, the organizer, the mentee, and the mentor, to come to an agreement on something.
That's interesting. I think that's good to get some kind of perspective of kind of what kind of commitments, if you're looking at the costs of an actual formal relationship, and kind of what kind of timelines you'd be looking at. So with that, the program would be quite established, so you would be really drawing on their resources and the materials that they provide.
Yeah, definitely. Every program has, like the formal programs have to have an organizer, so they're usually always available.
That's good to know, especially as some of our listeners are either looking for a mentorship relationship, or are mentors themselves and needing some perspective as far as what they're getting themselves into or what this could entail. I know that there's a lot of, there's benefit both ways. I know, as many of the speakers had mentioned through this call, that there's, Angie specifically, talked about you're getting something, they're getting something, but just, there's a relationship there, and neither just can easily walk away unless it's more informal and it's just not working. And this one's for you, and maybe something you saw as you guys put together that program. How many mentors or mentees should you have?
This one is pretty personal. It's really undefined number, but much like you can say how many best friends can you have, it's with all relationships, you get out of your relationship with your mentor or mentee what you put into it. So I think Christine hit on it earlier, that you don't want to overcommit. Make sure that you are dedicated to the relationship that you're entering into and have time to work with your mentor and mentee. So you can have as many mentors or mentees as you like, but please make sure that you have enough time to focus on those relationships and ensure that they can be fulfilling for both participants.
Thanks. I think that's helpful, because I'm sure it would be not that hard to overcommit yourself, and then, it would really impact that relationship and what both parties are getting from it. So no, that's helpful. Thanks, Anne. This is the last question that we'll have for today. And again, if there's any questions, please don't hesitate. I know it's been a really good discussion, and, I think a lot of kind of the basics were covered. So with that, this one's for Angie. How much time should you dedicate to mentoring?
It's funny, we've been talking about that within the context of formal mentoring, and I struggle with saying no sometimes, because I do get such enormous pleasure from watching especially young women progress in their confidence. So I like to try to tie some of the time to a real task, and I have been able to do that with my work with Women in Mining Canada, right? So if I'm working with the volunteer on a specific task for a deliverable, and we're also getting some mentoring along the way, then that's a 2-for-1. But I do find that I overcommit myself, and I try to help to match at the expense of, having some time to myself or even getting work done. So it's tough. This is a tough one. But I think it is personal, as Anne was saying.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good way to summarize it. Something that you feel in the relationship itself would dictate, how much time it required, or how much time it was required. So yeah. Great. Well, thank you to everyone. That's all the time we have for questions. Thanks to our participants and to our speakers today. Before I turn things back to Ensemble, for more information on WIM Canada, please visit us online or follow us on social media. Thanks to everyone for participating in the webcast, and congratulations again to our award recipients, Christine and Aimee. Now back to Jen to close it off for today's webinar.
Great. Thank you so much, Kristen, and to all of the panelists today. I think the discussion was excellent, and some great examples of the value of mentorship and different ways to go about it. So unfortunately, that is all the time we do have for today. But if you have any further questions or concerns that weren't answered in today's webcast, don't hesitate to start the conversation on Ensemble or connect to me directly. We also encourage you to please stay connected. A recording of today's webinar will be available on the Ensemble site within a few days, and I invite you to review the monthly blog post as well. So this concludes our Ensemble webcast. Enjoy the rest of your day, and do join us next month for our next Ensemble webcast. Thank you.
Thank you.